What are your thoughts on GNS?
For anyone that doesn't know, GNS was a theory of game design and analysis that was popular on the Forge, and it assigns 3 characteristics to tabletop games, role-playing games specifically. So the G is game, the N is narrative, and the S is simulation. These are linked to each other, so they're not completely distinct, but the idea is that the game elements of an RPG are the system. How do you win, how do you lose, how do you succeed, how do you fail, those sorts of things. So board games are typically very high in game element, as are war games and so on. So it's more about the game than anything else. Narrative is how much is it about story, how much is it about social interactions, genre tropes, how much of it is the role play, the story, the setting, that sort of thing. So that's the N. So high narrative games would be things like my description system, or Fate, or anything that's more wibbly wobbly, hand wavy mechanics wise. So that's what you would consider to be more narrativist, where it's much more about the story than it is about the game, the winning or losing. And S is simulationist. So how much is it trying to simulate the real world? How much is it trying to cover everything with the rules? Are there special rules to emulate a genre, thereby simulating that genre? Simulationism is a style of game that has fallen out of favour to a large degree. The exception would probably be Call of Cthulhu, which feels much more grounded in realism, apart from the Gribblies. So, I think there's a 4th category that's missing. I would add toy. Now, toy is something you can just play about with. It doesn't necessarily have a story. It's not necessarily trying to simulate anything. It isn't even necessarily a game exactly. So what I would mean by toy would be something like Minecraft, where there isn't really a story. You're just kind of free to run about and dig and build. And so on. Or Lego would be another example. So, and these things are all in tension with each other. The more you pin things down, the less of a toy it is. The more emphasis you put on background and story and narrative, the less emphasis you have on game, and probably the less emphasis you have on simulation and so on. I think it's flawed. I think there are games that it can't really describe, and I think all these things are intrinsically linked. I think genre emulation is the most obvious link between narrative and simulation, but normally we would think about simulationist games being hostile to narrative. So there are contradictions and problems in it. I think it's a useful tool when you sit down to decide a game, is like, where on these coordinates do I want to pitch this game? Where do I want to place it between these points? And in analysing games, it can be useful, but it's not the be-all and end-all. It doesn't describe everything. It has problems, but it's a good starting point for analysis.